Hello everyone, I've been playing a ton of Enter the Gungeon, around 69 hours to be exact, so hopefully my opinions will help inform you as to whether or not you want to purchase this game as well. Essentially, your character is there to kill its past, and in order to do so, you must progress through several floors, all the while collecting keys to open chests, to get guns, and collecting currency from your slain foes to buy even more guns and passives that affect all of your guns. Each floor has a variety of bosses that are meant to challenge you at that point, and acing each boss gives you an extra health point. You may be thinking right now, this sounds a little bit like The Binding of Isaac, where you collect as many power-ups as possible to buff your tiers, and collect as much health as possible from defeating bosses. And while there is a similarity to be had, Enter the Gungeon focuses more on reaction time and ammunition conservation. With the inclusion of the dodge roll mechanic, the player becomes invulnerable for a set period of time while traveling a very specific distance away from their starting location. Pretty much you can jump through bullets, and by allowing the player to do this, rooms can get pretty full of bullets, and bosses shoot off a load as well. Enter the Gungeon also focuses on maintaining your health more so than obtaining new health. There's a specific amount of health that you will obtain through defeating bosses, and collecting even more health can be quite rare. So runs can be won and lost specifically on whether or not you have taken out the boss without taking a single point of damage, which I find really fun. Every single floor's bosses not only have an aspect of pattern recognition to them, but they also challenge the player to react instantly. I never went through the entire game feeling like a boss was impossible to defeat on the first try. There's plenty of room for error and perfection as well. And the variety of guns. There are so many different guns, and most of them are really fun. There's the poopy guns that you'll get in between getting the really amazing guns, which make you appreciate having those guns even more. There's a gun that fires a gigantic ball that splits into shotgun shells that deal an insane amount of damage. There is a gun that is a side of a ship, like an engine out of a ship, and it is a melee range gun that pushes you around the room, and it is so fun to use. There are so many interesting guns and a decent amount of passive synergies to buff those guns as well. I have yet to find myself running through gun fatigue, as every single run has at least one or two new guns. Even though I have several favorites, such as the alien ship gun that I mentioned, I don't always run across it. I always have to tailor my run to not only my guns but my passives that I've collected, and that feels fun. That gives the game a fresh experience every single playthrough. Not to mention that every single character has an overarching story that you have to progress through over multiple runs. There's a secret hidden ending that I will not spoil that has to be obtained through collecting items throughout the course of your game. So not only do you have to collect said items, but you also have to make it to the final floor to turn them in. And then in between every single run, you can enter the breach. Every single boss defeated will drop currency, and that currency is used to unlock even more guns, more passive items, and a potential chaotic blessing. There are so many reasons to keep the player, me, coming back. Every single time I finish a run, I'm that much closer to getting my next weapon. I now understand the next boss's pattern, so I probably won't get hit. And by focusing on that mechanic of acing bosses to get health, there's a serious focus on self-improvement, along with collecting those toys. There's also an interesting mechanic between floor to floor, where shops or special rooms can be locked, which can cause situations where the player may want to use the key to get into the shop early, or hold on to the key to see what kind of chest is available on the floor, and possibly risking the entirety of their run based on what their ammunition and weapon setup is. And on top of all of this, enemies feel fair. Where there's a focus on self-mobility and accuracy, there are very few enemies who run you down while throwing out projectiles. As a matter of fact, I do not believe there's a single enemy who actually aggressively attacks you while firing projectiles. Enemies can be quite predictable to compensate for the fact that you are always watching out for where the bullets are going and what their patterns are. 9,000% of this game feels fair. It feels fun to play. The button presses are responsive. The character moves instantaneously. Using the mouse and keyboard is responsive. It's fun. While the rooms are randomly generated, the enemy placement within them, as far as I know, is not. There are set spawn locations for enemies, allowing you to tailor your weapon choice to the room. There are so many secrets in the game, I haven't even unlocked them all yet. I can't sing the game's praises enough. However, I am going to now talk about one aspect of the game that I do not like, and it is heavily spoilerish. So I'm going to put an annotation on the video to skip ahead if you're afraid of spoilers. And that's enough time for somebody to click on the spoilery thingy. So essentially, my first problem with the game is a minor nitpick. Imagine, after all that, my first problem is a minor nitpick, and that's that there are two bosses that I believe should have been swapped, and that's Cannon Balrog and the Amoconda. The reason for this is that the challenge that the Cannon Balrog represents is in its health and situational awareness, whereas the Amoconda chases you down, which is similar to the Dreadnought, and can be a bit of a DPS race and quite chaotic as it has several turrets that will fire at you from off screen. So I think with a health downgrade, the Cannon Balrog will be an appropriate challenge for Floor 2 over Floor 3. Now, the biggest criticism I have with the game is surrounding Bullet Hell, the super secret final area that once you've completed the game in its entirety for each character, you can unlock. This area is meant to challenge players to their utmost limits, which in itself is fine and dandy. However, how it does this, I have issue with. The main conceit of the game is about managing resources, knowing when and where to use your guns, and visiting shops to collect new items and ammunition to extend how far you can go. The final floor has none of this. There's no chests, there's no shops, and the floor is huge. Any run that has inefficient guns will have a huge amount of problem here, as enemies have high health pools and there are a hell of a lot of rooms. Most of the times I've gone down there, I've hoped that either I'm taking a Mega P, a heroine, or some other super efficient gun to get me through the entire floor, or that I've picked the right direction instantly. It's quite possible to fight the final boss with just your starting weapon, and I'm not a big fan of this. Instead of having a more compact, challenging floor with each room being severely difficult, the floor can feel really long, and normally by the time I reach the 5th floor, it's usually around 30 to 40 minutes in a run. So going through a very long floor and possibly choosing the wrong direction multiple times and running out of ammunition in several or even all of my guns is not a very fun experience. It's great to challenge players, but it can be frustrating, even infuriating, to die a death by 1,000 cuts. If the floor size was cut down by 30 to 40% and some of the easier rooms were removed in compensation to keep it difficult, the floor will be far more rewarding to complete, and I have no gripes with the final boss. The Lich is a really fun fight. It's getting through that floor that doesn't feel rewarding. With some minor tweaks, it could be really fun. With all of my spoilery gripes out of the way, looking back, would I purchase this game again knowing what I know now? Absolutely. At full price, this game is a ton of fun for me. It's challenging, it's rewarding, it's fun in all the right places, and the gripes that I do have do not impact my overall enjoyment with the game. There are just some small areas that I wish were a little better. Overall, Enter the Gungeon gave me exactly what I wanted out of my experience, and I don't regret the purchase even in the slightest. So pretty much that's what I think of the game and my experience so far. I hope this information helps, and for now, peace out.